I think it was 2001. It was a long time ago, very long time ago. So it's really nice, and this is our very first experience in this particular place, as a matter of fact. Jaya and I we have served on the East Coast as well as in India with Dharmadas and Nirmala for some time. And now we're kind of part-time in America and in India. And so I would get a chance to come down here more often, I guess, now. So today's reading, something about sitting, silently meditating, steadfastly sitting in the silence. There's some words to that effect. And it always, every time I read that little passage, it reminds me of a picture. I think we've all seen the pictures like this several times, many times, no doubt, of the yogi sitting, probably with a halo of light around him, and sitting there steadfastly meditating. And in some of the pictures, there's a lot of light and a little bit of the yogi, and sometimes there's a lot of the yogi and not so much of the light. But I always think of that where the light begins to take over, and the yogi becomes part of the light, becomes one with the light. And I think, okay, maybe that'll be me one of these days. And of course, then the question comes, when? And then the next one is, how? We won't get there probably by just looking at those pictures, although that would sure be easy, wouldn't it? But we'll have to do something. And so, we ask ourselves that question somewhere along in our lives. How will I find, true happiness, or whatever words we put to it. And we realize that we have to do something, and we find a spiritual path. Perhaps this one, or one like it, one that gives us things to do, practices that we can do to take us to that place, to become one with the light. And so we begin our practice, and we do this and we do that, and we work at this. And we begin to have some things that begin to make sense to us. Yogas Chitta Vritti Dirod. I apologize for my fractured Sanskrit. That's not what I just said, by the way. I just realized that. It really means, somewhat translated in the Ananda fashion, is this: yoga is the neutralization of the waves of feeling. This is the way we're taught it. There's lots of translations of it, but that's how it's said to us. And I like to take it a little bit farther and say, yoga is the calming of the waves of emotions. A little bit different. Because when I think feeling, don't you, that feeling could be something calm. You could have calm feelings of love and calm feelings of joy and so forth. So those don't need to be calm. But when they turn into emotions, when they go up and down, and love turns into hate, and joy turns into anger, and so forth, up and down, that's when we need to do something about it. And we need to learn to calm the emotions. And so this is what we practice. We practice this, we learn this. This is one of the first things we learn, is how to still the breath, how to get the thoughts to calm down. And sometimes what happens after a little bit of a session of a practice, we come out of practice, and out of the blue will come some solution to something. Maybe you're having an extremely busy day. Things are going wrong all over the place. You have tons of things to do. You have to go to the other side of town, for heaven's sakes, 2 hours or something, to get over there and pick up some special item at a certain store, and it's the only place, of course, that will have it, and you have to do this. You just sit down and say, okay. And you sit down and you calm your mind and you meditate for just maybe only 5 minutes or something. You come out, okay, now I'm ready, and you set off. And before you get very far, the thought pops into your mind that very close by in the neighborhood is that very store, the same store, it's a chain, and you can just go over there to get that thing instead of the 2-hour trip you have to make. Well, when these things happen to me, the next thing that comes to my mind is, why was I so dumb and didn't know this before? It's right in my neighborhood, I know where it is. What happens is that when we meditate and we focus the mind and we calm the breath and we do all of these things, useless thoughts that are cluttering up the mind and that are driving us crazy, those useless thoughts begin to recede into the background. They may not go away altogether, but at least they're not in the foreground. And the important ones, it's as though you've taken a jumble of things, a puzzle, let's say, a jigsaw puzzle, and you've started to put it together, and the image appears by the taking away the ones that are not so important, and just the image shows. In a way, that's what happens. The important thoughts sort of come to the surface, so to speak, as though they're on a pond or something. They come up to the surface. And so this is one of the sort of benefits that we might not even be thinking about when we are practicing meditation. It's one of the things that we do, and one of the things that happens when we may not even be planning on it. We're just trying to get calm in general. And then what happens? That we have some sort of little insight or a new idea or a superconscious solution, sometimes we call them. These things will happen to us just out of the blue. We never know just exactly what's happening. We often will practice visualizations at the end of our meditations. And Swamiji wrote a book called Awaken to Superconsciousness, which you might have in your boutique there. And there's also, I looked up, and there's also 2 CDs that go with that book. One of them is Swamiji guiding us through one of his guided meditations. This one that I'm thinking of is Meditation on the Moonrise, I believe it's called, and where you imagine yourself sitting at the edge of a pond, beautiful summer evening, and you're watching the pond, and there's a breeze blowing. The little ripples are moving back and forth, and then the moon rises. And as the moon rises, you can see its reflection on the surface of the lake, but it's distorted by all those little ripples that are caused by the breeze. So as you become more calm in your meditation, the pond becomes more calm, the breeze dies down, and eventually it becomes completely still. And you can see the reflection perfectly on the surface of the pond. And this is how we think of it. This is a visual, we might say this is the spiritual eye, you might even say, that as that's moon's reflection that helps us to see how we can calm our minds. Well, then I always like to go a little farther with this and think, well, under the water, or in the water, but under the surface, are lots of fish. And they're making all sorts of, they're moving around and doing all kinds of things. But they're so far down in that water that we no longer perceive them. They're below the surface. They may be doing all kinds of things, but they're not disturbing the surface of the mind. And so very often people come to me and they say, I cannot concentrate. I'm having so much trouble getting those thoughts out of my mind. They're useless and they're driving me nuts and I can't meditate. And I think about that and I think, don't worry about those kinds of things. They're like the fish under the surface. Don't worry about them. No, yes, they're there, but don't put your mind on them to get rid of them. Just let them go. Just as, we often do some things in our meditation practice where we visualize the thoughts going away or floating down a stream or something like this. Do that. Don't be so concerned with getting rid of the thoughts. We all have thoughts. They're there, but let's just let them go. Let them go. and we'll find the calmness comes. And we often get these sorts of, little solutions to things as a result of having calmed our mind. Last weekend, we had a wonderful Kriya Yoga retreat. Jaya and Dharmadas were both part of one of the presenters. One of the best. And people have been telling me about how wonderful it was too. I wasn't even part of it, the presenting of it, but it's been really, it was very nice. One of the best. And what I got from that was a lot of practical information. I found that I went away from that feeling really encouraged and, feeling like, well, yeah, I'm doing a lot of those things that we're talking about. I'm doing okay. I think I'm going to make it. I'm not thinking, oh no, am I ever going to get there? I'm thinking, yeah, I'll get there. It might not be this lifetime, but I will. We'll all be there. And really, all it takes is some determination, yes, but commitment. A lot of people say, I don't understand what devotion is. I don't know, what is devotion? And then sometimes they think it's devotional practices. But if you don't know why you're doing something, an outward devotional practice, then it's kind of just like superstition. You're only doing them because you're told that this is what works or something. You don't really know from experience. And so they feel confused, and they don't feel that they are devotional by nature. So I've suggested to many people, think of some other words that might describe this. For example, what about commitment? What about dedication? What about loyalty? Aren't those all aspects, really, of what we think of as devotion? Intensity of effort, it's another thing. The willingness to keep going, keep trying. I did hear it described once by Gyandev at Ananda village. Let's see if I can remember it exactly. Something like, devotion is the energy that you apply to reach something that you aspire to. I don't know that's exactly how he put it, but pretty close. Devotion is like an energy. It's like something that we do to reach that goal, and it's not just an overnight thing. We're ready to do it forever, if that's what it takes. We call to God always, all the time. And when we do that in that sense of commitment, loyalty, I'm not giving up, I'm going to keep trying, this is another description, I guess, of devotion. And so people, as I say, people sometimes say that to me, and that's my answer. Let's think of devotion in those words or something like that. You can be creative. You can you can use common sense and think about, what exactly does that mean to me? And although they didn't particularly talk about devotion, that's what I got from that weekend, from that Kriya weekend. One of the things that Devi mentioned was that, again, we need to think of common sense solutions to things. She pointed out that it's said that Sister Gyanamata, who was one of Yogananda's foremost women disciples, she was very, very ill at the end of her life, and she was not able to get out of bed. But she didn't stop doing energization exercises. She did them in bed. Now, that never occurred to me that one could do that. But, as someone who's thinking, someone who's devotional in the sense that they're loyal and they're going to make this work, they're going to keep doing this, someone like that, well, think of these things. Use common sense. Be creative in how it is that you make your spiritual path yours. And you don't worry so much about whether, am I doing it exactly the way that they said in that one passage in that one place? Don't worry about that so much. Think about, how can I continue on? How can I have this same loyalty and dedication and devotion. How can I keep going with that? And so by doing this, you will begin to have a true practice that's really yours. As I mentioned, or maybe I didn't mention, we were with Dharmadas and Nirmala in India for a few years. And during that time that we were there, the monks decided that they were going to lead a 6-hour meditation twice a month for an indefinite length of time. And so I thought, oh, that sounds great. I'm going to try that. I never have been one that did 6-hour meditations, but I decided I'm going to do that. So I did, and I went to the first one, and a few hours into it, I began to think, well, I never actually made a commitment that I was going to stay here for this whole thing. And, okay, well, I'll stay here another 10 minutes. And so I did that, and it lasted all morning. Before I knew it, it was over. The meditation was over. And I managed to do all the way through they did this for about 6 months. And I managed to do this. I did it almost every time. Think of things like that you have done. They don't have to be that, but whatever it is, anything that you've done. And in a sense, put it into your spiritual bank. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. And so put that in there. And think of that when you are having difficulties, things are not quite working out the way they're supposed to. Go back and look at those kinds of things. And be satisfied and realize that, yes, just like I came away from that Kriyaban retreat, I came away saying to myself, I'm doing this. It's working. It's just not the way I thought it was supposed to be, but it is working, and I am doing this. All of us can make the spiritual path our path, whether it's this particular one or another guru, whatever it is. Keep sharing with your guru, whoever that is, and continue to remind yourself, I'm doing this. It's becoming this is my path, and I am making progress, and I am going to reach my goal.
Thank you, and I'd like to express my pleasure to be here after many years here sharing with all of you in Sacramento. This week, I looked at the topic, and the question of inner kingdom I saw was the topic, and I was wondering, what is that? And I remember something that Master used to say. He says, the important question is not what, but how. How do we experience? What is truth? How do we experience truth? What is this inner kingdom? How do we experience this inner kingdom? And as I was thinking about that, a poem went across my mind, which I'd like to share with you, which probably most of you have heard perhaps many times if you take yourself back to high school at that time when we had to learn these things. And this is something, it was by Robert Frost. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for the passing there, had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves, no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I ever should come back. I should be telling this with a sigh. Some were ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. That, I remember reading that poem in high school. It's quite a well-known one. And of course, I interpreted it quite outwardly. Here you are in high school, and you're looking, which road am I going to take in life? And I looked at that poem as a call to take the road less traveled, you see, and that would be the one that, of course, the more noble path it seemed, to go the one less traveled. But as I've grown older, I began to interpret that poem and seeing that poem. It's not necessarily the big things in life, the road less traveled, or there's two roads diverging to get to where our goal is in life. There's actually, we have to see that also, and we can interpret that on a very day-to-day decisions that all of us are making every day of our lives in order to take us as what our hearts wants to achieve. We want to know joy. We want to know peace. We want to know the meaning of life. We want to know what's the right thing to do. Should I do this? Should I do that? What decisions should I make in life? How do I find God? How do I experience this inner kingdom? What do I do about that? And so we're making these decisions, and always there stands before us, you might say, two roads, always branching out. It seems probably there's many, but it's one and it branches again and again and again. And we're always having to make these decisions of how to go in life. And you could even take it even further. It's not only those decisions that we're making consciously, it's in every little action of our life. It's what is it that is really the embodiment of the spiritual path. It's how in every moment of our life we're making a decision in one way or another. And the tendency, of course, is to take that path less trodden, or more trodden, you might say. It's to take the normal path. And what is that? And then again here, the poet is saying he took the one less traveled, and that's what made all the difference. And so we look at our own life. Now, I've noticed something in my life that perhaps some of you too, when I was younger, I haven't had a chance so much lately, but when I was younger, I used to like to go hiking. Go hiking, perhaps go up in the mountains, up in the desolation wilderness, or somewhere, go hiking. And oftentimes, when you're hiking and you want to travel, not on a pathway perhaps, you're going just in a cross country in a ravine, and you're traversing land. Perhaps below you see there's a stream down there, and there's a ridge top up there, but you're going across. You're just traversing. And if you're not paying attention, what you will do is you will naturally go downhill. You'll be thinking you're going across that, traversing that on a straight line, but gradually you go down. You have to make a conscious effort to keep yourself from going down. You have to go up a little bit, because the landscape itself is going to pull you down toward the stream at the bottom. And in order to counter that, you have to always be taking a step a little bit going up. And this is how life is. If we take the well-trodden path that our life sometimes has guided us without thinking, our habits, our tendencies, our inclinations, the pressures from our environment, all of these things pushing us, and we're not thinking about it, it's going to push us in a certain direction. And we have to counter that. And isn't it something, perhaps you've noticed, as I've noticed, it always takes a little bit of effort to do the right thing. Now, if we've started good habits when we're younger, maybe it's a habit to do the right thing, but even to start that habit, it took some effort to establish that habit. Whereas to do the thing that maybe isn't so right, is not going to necessarily get us where we want to go, it's easy to do that. The well-trodden path is just easy, and we don't have to think about it. But if we want to do the noble thing in life, if we want to do the aspiring thing in life, if we want to do something that's going to higher level of and consequently, you see in us, as the years have passed, I've come to see the spiritual path as that path of learning to make that little choice in the learn to make a choice, put out a little bit of effort, to be conscious in what we're doing, and to consciously choose the higher path. Now, something I've watched Swami Kriyananda over the years, and you could, of course, describe his life in many different ways, and you would not be wrong, probably, because he was such a broad person in terms of his personality, but a couple of things stood out for me in his life. I found him to be probably the most affirmative man I've known. He was affirmative. And what was one of his mottos in life? Say yes to life. Say yes. And he always tells that story where and he was modeling Master, of course, where Master says, "How are you, Walter?" And he says, "Well, that's good," and left it at that. And Master didn't want to hear the rest of it. That's good. And Swami took that, and one of his mottos was say yes to life. In other words, affirm your reality. If you don't like your reality, affirm another one. Affirm it. Affirm the reality that you want to create for yourself, rather than just drifting in life. And in this way, we begin to move in a direction that's conscious, to consciously make a choice in life rather than simply drifting, following the subconscious perhaps, but at least be conscious. Now, ideally we want to make a choice. It's a good choice, but we can't even make a good choice in life unless we first gain the ability to make a choice. And so in the spiritual path, when we teach people to meditate, we teach people to be awake, it's just the preliminary to being awake to do what? To do something that has a potential to uplift us. And in the spiritual sense, in terms of this topic today, to take us inward into that inner kingdom. Now, if you looked at this a little bit even more deeply, I think this path of Kriya Yoga is exactly this. We had Sadhana Devi mentioned that this weekend we had a very lovely Kriya retreat. And thinking in terms of Kriya, I've come to see that in the practice of doing Kriya, and I think probably many of you, perhaps most of you also, are Kriya bonds. Kriya is a practice that helps us to be that affirmative self of Swami, and mimicking what Swami was like. As we do Kriya, with each Kriya, I am affirming, I will. With each Kriya, I'm saying, I choose thy light. Just like we say in the Festival of Light, I choose thy light. I choose only thee. And this is what we need to do to live our lives, is to live our life affirmatively. Or live our life doing a little bit extra. And I have used this in my own life as a guiding principle. Because we're always asking, what's the right thing to do? And unfortunately in life, it's always in balance a little bit. It's not so obvious. For me, it's never, usually, well, should I do this or should I do that? They seem both to be pretty good. You wouldn't even be asking the questions if they weren't close, because you wouldn't. But then and I've always looked in my own life and I thought, well, I want to choose the one that's a little bit more, takes effort. Because I don't trust myself. Sometimes what happens is if I have to choose, the first impulse is to do the easy thing. You might say, follow that easy path where everybody has gone before. But if you step back and you think, what's the right thing to do in life? What's the thing that's going to be serviceful? What's the thing that's going to help somebody? What's the thing that's going to help myself? Usually those are the things that take just a little bit more effort. And you have to say, okay, I will. I'll do it. I'll say yes. Mommy once told me, I asked him, I said, Swami, I don't know what to do about a certain thing. And he got he actually had the somewhat disgusted look on his face when he looked at me, because he said, like he was saying, "You idiot." That's how I sort of interpreted it. He says, "Why are you asking me that? It's obvious." He says, "Look for an opportunity and then act on it." That's all he said. And I said, "You didn't tell me what that opportunity." I was hoping he would say what that opportunity was, but he didn't. He just said, "Look for an opportunity and act on it." Well, in order to look for an opportunity in life, we have to have our eyes open. We have to be awake. We have to be conscious. We have to be present. We have to be there, and then we have to choose it. We have to choose it. But if we don't, we're not going to drift into superconsciousness. We're not going to just drift into finding God, and He's shaking us, wake up, wake up. We have to be up and at it. And this is how we want to approach life. And so I see Kriya as exactly that. Kriya is a practice to wake up. As you draw that life current up, it's a conscious act. I offer myself. I choose you. I choose you, Lord. And then I hope you choose me. But God chooses those who choose Him. Remember that also from the festival. So we have to make that choice. That's what the spiritual path is about. And it's not once in a lifetime at the age of 19, I'm glad I did that, or else I'd be over there. It's more than that. It's not even every day. It's every moment when a situation comes to us. We have to be awake to make the choice. And this is what the path of meditation, this is what Master's path of self-realization, this is what the path of Kriya Yoga teaches us to do, to wake up so that we can make the choice to do the right thing. Hopefully in time we gain wisdom. We gain wisdom to make those wise choices. But first we have to wake up to be able to even make that choice. So many blessings to you, and thank you again for having Sadhana Devi and me here to share with you this morning. We're now I'd like to invite our